So still 9/8 factoring by grouping. And in the last video, we had just completed this problem for example 2, factoring completely. We noticed that we had a GCF for all of our terms, and so we pulled out our GCF first, the 4t, and then we went on to factor by grouping the rest of our 4-term polynomial. So we had our 4t out here, but then the rest of it just went the same way as we did in example 1. And so that's what we're going to practice again. Looking at this 4-term polynomial, I notice again that I do have a GCF for all 4 of my terms. And anytime you have a GCF for all of your terms, you always want to pull it out. So looking at 45m to the 4th, 9m cubed, 30m squared, and 6m, I can see that I can pull out a 3m from all of my terms. So then I'd have 3m times 3 times what would give me 45? 15. M times m cubed gives me m to the 4th. 3m times negative 3m squared would give me negative 9m cubed. 3m times plus 10m would give me 30m squared. And 3m times negative 2 would give me negative 6m. Now we can factor by grouping our first group and our second group. So again, I have to keep that 3m out there. Let's not forget about our 3m. But then the rest of this, I'll just factor by grouping as usual. Find your GCF for the first group, and that GCF would be a 3m squared. 3m squared times 5m would give you 15m cubed. 3m squared times a negative 1 would give you negative 3m squared. And then our second group has a GCF of 2. I'm going to pull out a 2, so plus 2 times 5m would give me 10m, and then 2 times negative 1 would give me the negative 2. Now let's rewrite this inside part so I still have my 3m times, and we're going to pull out the 5m minus 1. So I have 5m minus 1 times, and then these create their own binomial, 3m squared plus 2. And there's your answer. Again, you can check it by FOILing these out and then multiplying everything by 3m. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, now we're going to learn how to factor a trinomial using grouping. And you may think that this method's even easier than using the FOIL method. So we just have a couple of steps here. The first step is to multiply or find the product of AC. That means I want to multiply my first coefficient times my last coefficient. So I'm going to multiply 24 times negative 6, which gives me negative 144. The second step is to find 2 factors of AC that have sum B. So this is very similar to something we did a couple lessons ago. You want to find the 2 factors of this number, negative 144, that will add to give you your middle term of that positive 10. So let's go ahead and start writing our factors. So again, we need the factors of negative 144, that's the factors of AC, that will add to give you this middle term of 10. Okay, well I know if I'm going to get a negative number, I need to multiply a negative times a positive. That'll give me a negative. But then if I want them to add to give me a positive number, then we need to make sure that our positive number is bigger, so that we have a greater chance of ending up with a positive 10. There are a lot of factors of negative 144, so knowing that you need to get a sum of 10, you can probably skip the first couple. Like if you did, let's see, negative 1 and 144, that's going to be way too big. Same thing with negative 2 and 72. Again, that's way too big. So let's get down to some closer factors of 144. Like, let's see, we could multiply 144, or we could divide we could use 8 and 18. So let's see, negative 8 and 18. All you really have to do is sit with your calculator and start dividing. 144 divided by 2, 144 divided by 3, divided by 4, divided by 5, until then you would end up with these factors, negative 8 and 18. And if you add negative 8 and 18, you end up with a positive 10, which is what we needed. So we found the two numbers we're going to use, negative 8 and 18. In the third step, you're going to rewrite the trinomial using the sum. So using these two numbers that we just had, negative 8 and 18. So we're going to rewrite this trinomial. You leave the first term and the last term alone. So we just rewrite, we have 24h squared. We don't do anything to that. And we're going to leave negative 6 alone too. But instead of writing plus 10h, I'm going to write minus 8h and plus 18h. Notice that minus 8h and plus 18h, if you combine them, you would get positive 10. So we haven't changed anything. We're just rewriting it. And then I have my minus 6. So this is the same polynomial as this one. It's just rewritten. But now that we have 4 terms, we can factor by grouping like we've been doing. So your fourth step is then just to factor by grouping. So you group your first two terms together and your last two terms together. So I'll first factor 24h squared minus h. What's the GCF? Oh, actually, even before we do that, we always have to check and see if there's a GCF for all 4 of our terms, and there most certainly is. We can divide all of these by 2. So first I'm going to pull out a 2 and then rewrite it. So 2 times 12h squared gives you 24h squared. 2 times negative 4h gives you negative 8h. 2 times 9h gives you 18h. And 2 times negative 3 would give you the negative 6. Now that we've pulled out that GCF, we'll find the GCF of our two different groups. So there's one of my groups and my other group. Again, we need to keep that 2, bring that 2 down. Don't forget about it. It's really important. And then let's find the GCF of our first group, 12h squared and 4h. Out of both of these, I can pull out a 4h, and then I have left 3h. 4h times 3h, 12h squared. 4h times negative 1 would give me negative 4h. And then out of our second group, the GCF of 9h and 3 is just a positive 3, so plus 3. 3 times 3h gives you 9h, and 3 times negative 1 gives you negative 3. Now when we're looking, we see again, oh, we have those common binomials right here. We can factor out these binomials from each one of these sets. So I have 2 times 3h minus 1 times, and then these become their own binomial, 4h plus 3. And to check, we check it the same way that we check the others. You can just FOIL it out. There's your answer. All right, let's try another one of those. So again, we want to rewrite that middle term. We want to rewrite this middle term as 2 terms so we end up with a 4-term polynomial so that we can group. So our first step is to find the product of 63 times 5. And 63 times 5 is 315. Now we use that product to find the factors of 315 that will add to give us on our middle term of 44. So we're going to find the sum of 44. And again, you can sit here and you can do, oh, by the way, since they're both positive, we're not worrying about any negatives. You could do 1 times 315. You know that's going to be way too big. 2 doesn't work. 3 is still too small. So we need to find some bigger numbers to use. So let's see. If we divided 315 by 5, that's 63. That's still too big. Can you divide 315 by 6? No, you can't. 315 divided by 7? No. It gives you 45. We're getting a little closer. 315 divided by, see, can we divide it by 9? You get 35, and I think we may have found it. So if we multiply 9 times 35, we end up with 315, and 35 plus 9 does give us 44. So we're using 9 and 35. So again, just sit there and play with your calculator and find some factors that will get you that sum. So 9 and 35 are the numbers we're going to use, and then we have to rewrite our trinomial as a 4-term polynomial so we can use grouping. So I have 63d squared, leave the first term alone, plus now we're going to use 9d plus 35d instead of doing 44d because they are the same thing, plus 5. Then we always want to check and see if there's a GCF for our 4 terms. In this case, I don't believe there is, since we have a 5 here, but we can't divide everything by 5, and 5 is a prime number. So now we just factor by grouping. I have my first 2 terms and my last 2 terms. Find your GCF of your first 2 terms. What is the GCF of 63 and 9? Well, you can divide them both by 3. So I have 3D. 3D times 21D gives me 63D squared. And 3D times 3, and actually, that's not our GCF. Notice we can pull out another 3, so what we should have used was 9. Obviously, 63 is divisible by 9. I don't know what I'm thinking today. So instead, our GCF is going to be 9D. Then 9D times 7D gives us 63D squared, and 9D times 1 gives us 9D. Then on our second group, we can pull out a 5, so plus 5 times 7D and 5 times 1. And then we see we have that common binomial here that we can also factor out. So I'll factor out a 7D plus 1 times, and then your leftover terms become their own binomial, 9D plus 5, and there's your answer. Foil to check. Okay, let's try one more. We'll try to do this quickly. I want to multiply first 4 times negative 70, and 4 times negative 70 gives me negative 280. Now I want to see what the factors of negative 280 are that will add to give me 33. I need to multiply a negative times a positive to get a negative in the middle. And I want my positive number to be bigger so that I can get a sum of a positive number. So again, you can try 1 and 280, or actually negative 1 and 280, but that's way too big. You can try negative 2 and 140, also too big. So then just start going from there. 280 divided by 4 gives you 70, but that difference is too great. 280 divided by 5 is 56, still too great of a difference. How about 280 divided by 10? 280 divided by 10 gives us 28. That doesn't work. I think that may have skipped too many. 280 divided by 8 is 35. 280 divided by, let's see what else we could try. 280 divided by 7 is 43, so maybe we could do negative 7 and 40. Negative 7 times 40 gives us 280, and also when we add them together we do get a positive 33. Okay, so it took a while, but we did find our factors that multiply to give us the negative 280 and add to give us 33. So now we can rewrite our trinomial. 4y squared minus 7y plus 40y minus 70. So remember, leave your first and last terms alone. We're just rewriting the middle term. And then factor by grouping. Is there something we can pull out of all of these? No, there's not. So we'll group the 4y squared and negative 7y. And actually, that's great. And then we'll group the 40y and negative 70. The only thing that 4y squared and 7y have in common is just a y times 4y and then y times negative 7. And then in our second group, we see they both have in common a 10. So I'll plus 10 times y minus, times 4y minus 7. And then again, we can rewrite it. 4y minus 7 times y plus 10, and you can FOIL to check.